Welcome in, everybody. This is Two-Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Thank you for being part of the Two-Way community, growing so rapidly you won't believe it. We're happy to have you here on this very busy news day. A lot of news about Ukraine. We'll talk about Caroline Leavitt briefed at the White House, and as she often does, talked up a storm. We'll show you some of that. And then a new investigative piece on Laura Loomer with some quotes spicier than a spicy margarita with guacamole made, as my son likes to make it, with lots of jalapenos. And you won't believe Laura Loomer's reaction to our guest's exclusive reporting on Laura Loomer. Actually, you will believe it. It's right in character, but still great to see. And then some odds and ends in the news. Sherrod Brown raising money, Adam Schiff forming a legal defense fund, and Donald Trump upset about the woke Smithsonian Institution. All that and more on this brand new episode of Two-Way Tonight. Our guest, Marc Caputo of Axios, the Florida man, making a triumphal return to this platform. And Mark is going to have a lot to say about everything we talk about, but particularly about Ukraine. Some interesting stuff there. And then making his debut here, Gabe Kaminsky. In all honesty, he hates Two-Way, but we've convinced him to come on anyway. No, he says he likes Two-Way, and we'll find out why. And he'll tell us about his exclusive reporting on Laura Loomer. And Marc Caputo has opinions about everything, but his opinions about Laura Loomer richer than a bowl of Campbell's vegetable soup, which I guess is maybe not that rich, depending on your appetite and taste. In any event, thank you for being here. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, you want to get in the conversation, Ukraine, Laura Loomer, the Adam Schiff Legal Defense Fund, please raise your hand. Raise it high and loud and proud if you want to be part of the conversation. We'd love new people. Lots of new people on tonight. I can see you just like on Romper Room, so please raise your hand. And if you're watching on X or on YouTube, please don't raise your hand. Don't put smack in the chat. Don't forget our peace, love, and understanding. And we do not accept contributions to the Adam Schiff Legal Defense Fund. Please make them directly to Adam Schiff. Amongst our sponsors tonight include one of my favorite sponsors. I love all our sponsors roughly equally, but I have to say, you've heard me talk about them before. The good folks at Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth stuff. They make clothes. They make bedding. Couldn't be more comfortable. I've been wearing it all summer. They're made from viscose from bamboo. It takes the moisture and heat away from your body. I've been sleeping on the sheets also. Soft, comfortable, and again, almost like science fiction, how much they cool you down just sleeping on them, even on the hottest nights of the year. I couldn't have enjoyed it more. The bedding does 100-night sleep trial. If you don't like them before 100 days are up, so set your calendar for 99 days just in case, you can return them. No questions asked, but if you keep them, you get a 10-year warranty, a decade of cooling sleep. So upgrade your summer sleep now before summer ends. Go to CozyEarth.com. Use the code Two-Way. Gabe, you're not going to believe this. If you use the code Two-Way, you get 40% off. Best-selling sheets, pajamas, and more. 40% off just for using the code Two-Way. That's spelled T-W-A-Y for the less literate amongst you. Great opportunity to share what I've had, and I'll say it again, I've worn the pants almost every day this summer. They couldn't be great. And even on the cooler nights this summer, they're spectacularly comfortable. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy, thanks to our sponsor, Cozy Earth. All right, little of the news, and then we're going to bring our guest in just a second. As I said, Caroline Leavitt briefed today. She talked at some length about President Trump, and amongst the things she said was that he's confident that Vladimir Putin said, ready for a bilateral meeting. If you listen to the soundings coming out of Moscow, you wouldn't necessarily know that that's true, because the Russians have not said what Donald Trump says is true, that there's going to be some sort of meeting, and Putin's agreeing to do it. I heard talk today that it's going to be in Europe, somewhere in Western Europe. What was it, Geneva? Is that the city I saw? Somebody reported maybe Geneva, but it's not been announced yet. Donald Trump also said, or Caroline today also reaffirmed, no boots on the ground. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Gabe's piece on Laura Loomer, which we'll talk about with him in a second, basically says what I've heard a lot of people have heard, but Gabe has extraordinary blind quotes, which Laura Loomer says he just made up, like put in ChatGPT, write a few blind quotes. Gabe will explain without revealing his sources how that's not true. But basically says a lot of people in the White House and the administration around the president believe that Laura Loomer's activities are not totally based on her profession of loyalty to the president, but may be based on being paid directly or indirectly by corporate interests. And I have some reason to believe that Gabe's piece is correct, not just because he's a credible reporter, but some of the things I've heard too. So great reporting by Gabe. We'll talk about that, and maybe Gabe and I will read the Laura Loomer tweets together so you can see her response. Tulsi Gabbard today revoked the security clearances of 37 former intelligence officials, many who worked on issues like Russia. That's getting a lot of attention. House Republicans, we told you last night, are getting documents from the administration, from the DOJ on Maxwell and Epstein this Friday. The House Republicans now say they'll start making those public. We'll see what exactly comes out of that. I think you know my position on that whole thing. And the Smithsonian, as I said, President Trump said today, no woke. So let's do a little bit on Ukraine here. Sherrod Brown, getting in the Senate race in Ohio, says he was raised, hold your horses and your wallets, $3.6 million in the first 24 hours of the race. That will reconfirm for Chuck Schumer that he was right to recruit him. I will say, I don't recall ever giving Mr. Brown my email address, but I've gotten 34 email solicitations to give him money since he got in the race, including the other day, 3 straight emails in my inbox. And I get a lot of emails. 3 straight were from Sherrod Brown asking me to give him money. And a reminder, this program is now available as a podcast, as is the morning meeting. You can watch it on YouTube, but you can also listen to the podcast. Gabe, I'm not going to introduce you formally, but I'm going to unmute you. Where would you say the morning meeting podcast ranks on all the list of Apple podcasts in the news category? They ranked the top 200. Where would you say the morning meeting, just out for like a week as a podcast? What number would you say we rank, Gabe? Give us a guess.
It's got to be, it's number one.
Well, it's not number one, because number one is that New York Times podcast that, frankly, I don't get why it's so popular. But no, we're not number one, Gabe. But here we are. Go ahead and put up Sam, number 21. This is where we rank. Number 7. This morning we were 13, and we said to our community in the morning meeting, please go on Apple and subscribe. And we said we wanted to pass Ben Shapiro, and we wanted to pass what's that lady's name? Pivot. What's that lady's name? Somebody remind me. No, we passed Candace yesterday. We wanted to pass Ben Shapiro.
Heather Cox Richardson.
No, we wanted to pass. That was 2 days ago. What's the name of the tech lady? She's there with Pivot.
Kara Swisher.
Kara Swisher. So we said Sean wanted to pass Kara Swisher. Dan wanted to pass Ben Shapiro. We asked you, the two-way community delivered. The morning meeting now number 7. Now, who do we have left to pass? We're never going to pass the daily. And someday we're going to do a whole episode on the daily, and you guys are going to explain to me why that is easily the most popular podcast in the news category. But I think Dan would like to pass Tucker, and Sean would like to pass Pod Save America. So that's our goal now. Now, this program too, we're not quite number 7 on this show, but we're doing pretty well. I think we're in the top 25 in the news category. Please go now and like and subscribe both shows, and let's pass Pod Save America. Let's pass Tucker, just for fun. Thank you very much for your service to America. So let's tell you one more thing from another sponsor, and then we're going to bring in our guests, and then and only then will we play a little Caroline Levitt, and then and only then will we get to your questions. So please, if you're here on the two-way platform, get ready, because although I listed a lot of things we got to get to, it's going to go fast. It's going to go lickety-split. So here we go. Our other sponsor tonight is our close personal friends at Indeed. If you're hiring now, thinking about you got to fill those jobs, lickety-split. And when it comes to hiring, Indeed is indeed all you need. Go to Indeed and use the sponsored job feature. That means your job postings jump right to the top. They reach the relevant candidates even faster. Indeed data makes that clear. 45% more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. There's no longer any need to wait to speed up the hiring process you need to get done, even in the middle of summer, especially in the heat of the summer. You want to go into the fall fully staffed. Listeners to this program, Gabe, this is another sale you want to take advantage of if you've got jobs to fill at the free press. Barry's constantly saying we need more people. $75 off sponsored job. You get a sponsored job credit, $75 if you go to Indeed.com/two-way. Again, go to Indeed.com/two-way right now. Support this program by doing that. They've got sophisticated metrics there, as you would imagine. So they know if you use the /two-way, you came here through the program. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, let's bring in our guests. couldn't be more excited, as I said, to have Gabe here. We'll bring in Gabe first. Mark doesn't stand on ceremony. Gabe, welcome in. I've screwed up bringing you in, so Sam will fix that. Gabe, first of all, thank you. How long you been at the Free Press?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Since March, I was at the Washington Examiner for about 3 years before that.
Yeah, and are you a left wing journalist, a right wing journalist? I think Laura Loomer said you were left wing. Seems to me you're just an investigative journalist, but do you consider yourself left wing or right wing?
I try not to consider myself one or the other, just reporting on both sides. But yeah, and Laura Loomer's telling, based on that story, I'm
Yeah,
a leftist anti-Trump journalist.
yeah. But you just consider yourself an investigative reporter who's interested in the public interest, as best I can tell.
That's my goal. I mean,
Yeah. You ever met Barry Weiss?
yeah, she's my
Yeah.
boss. Yeah.
What's she like?
It's a great boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not my boss, but she's my neighbor, and I like her quite a bit. And at Two Way, we're just so impressed with what you all have built. So
Oh, awesome.
congratulations on that. And we're going to talk with Mark about your piece in just a second. But super glad to have you here. And just you were nice enough to say you like Two Way in a message you sent me.
Yeah.
Just for the audience, what do you like about Two Way?
Yeah, I mean, I like the heterodox nature of your platform. Like, I think there's a lot of media that feels like you're being yelled at, one way or the other, and I feel like you're trying to foster, just like legitimate conversation between people. So I always appreciate that.
Yeah. Now Mark Caputo comes on regularly, does not share your love for Two Way.
Oh
Thinks
man,
he
yeah,
thinks it's a bit of a scam. Mark
yeah.
Caputo, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Biggest scam ever.
Yeah.
Biggest
What
scam ever.
you like the Free Press? I bet you seem like a kind of
Love
a
it.
demo.
Love it.
Yeah.
I should be a subscriber, but I'm not. But to Gabe's point, I think what makes the show unique is obviously you, because you know your stuff. And just increasingly as the news consumer demands more complex and thoughtful commentary, you're just not getting that from just so many different quarters of the internet and of the media landscape.
I appreciate that. All right, gentlemen, so grateful to you both for being here again. If you're here on the platform, want to get on the conversation in a bit, raise your hand. Let's start with Ukraine. And Mark, I want you to help me drill down here, and then we're going to talk about this extraordinary piece that Gabe has done about Laura Loomer, which is a really good piece. Caroline Levitt today at the briefing. Well, at first, let's do number one. Wall Street Journal headline. People continue to flesh out the reporting on how any U.S. role in dealing with a possible peacekeeping in Ukraine and deterrence force would be U.S. preparing to use air power to support Euro ground force in Ukraine. Wall Street Journal. A lot of this is speculative, and of course, it's a little bit getting ahead of things because we don't have a deal yet. So I'm more interested in whether we're going to get a deal rather than what it will look like, but can walk and chew gum at the same time. Here's Caroline Levitt, number two at the briefing today, saying again what the president's been saying, which is contrary to what Moscow says, Putin's ready to meet with his fellow Vladimir. Number two, please.
Following the encouraging conversations yesterday, President Trump spoke with President Putin by phone, and he agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, a meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky, which would be followed, if necessary, by a trilateral meeting between President Putin, President Zelensky, and President Trump. As the president said, Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and Special Envoy Witkoff will continue to coordinate with Russia and Ukraine to make this happen as soon as possible. It's very important to remember that before President Trump's landslide victory last November, there was no end in sight to this bloodshed. Now, there may finally be light at the end of the tunnel and an opportunity for lasting peace. That's because President Trump is the peace president, and American leadership is back on the world stage. It should not be lost on anyone in this room that world leaders are coming right here to Washington, D.C. for help. While previous presidents have traveled halfway around the world to apologize for America, President Trump stands up for America, and he has firmly restored America's status as the undisputed leader.
Okay, hold on. Mark,
Yeah.
Your job is to cover the president. Does he sometimes pop up doing interviews with electronic media that you never heard about?
Not that I mean, on occasion. I mean, he just
like, did you know he was going to? Did you know he was going to be on Fox and Friends this morning?
I didn't, but I'm not always the most thoughtful about monitoring those just constant things. But
okay.
He even said in that Fox and Friends interview, like,
yeah.
I'll decide what I do. My staff doesn't tell me.
He's on a show right now. Do you know what show he's on right now?
I do not.
He's on with Mark Levin. And here's what he said on the Mark Levin show. This is pretty interesting. He says he approaches the Russia-Ukraine peace talks based, quote, on instinct more than process.
Right.
Yeah. And then did you know that, or are you just saying that sounds like Trump?
I'm just nodding
Yeah.
along.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
here's another thing he said, and if you can solve this riddle, you're going to win some sort of Nobel Peace Prize.
Awesome.
Ready? Here's what he said. You have to be a little bit optimistic. It's complicated. You know, I've settled 6 wars, and a lot of people say 7 because there's one that nobody knows about. Maybe the natives of Pluto versus Martians. Do you have any idea what the 7th he's talking about? A secret 7?
What are the countries in 1984? East Eurasia.
Oh, Eurasia, yeah. Wouldn't it be incredible?
Oceanus.
It would. Gabe, I don't know how closely you follow Mark's work, but this would be like right up Mark Caputo's alley to, in Mike Allen's newsletter tomorrow, break the story of what the 7th war was.
The secret 7th war.
Maybe it was Oasis versus Blur. Gabe, are you in your 30s?
I'm 25.
25. Okay, sorry. I didn't base that on how you looked. I based it on how accomplished you are. Do you even know who Oasis and Blur are?
Yeah, Oasis, not Blur.
Okay, Blur was a rival band, and for a long time in England, it was like, watch this, Mark. It was like Quisp versus Quake. You had to choose whether you were for Oasis and Blur. Now, I'm going back further. Quisp and Quake were cereals. When I was a kid, they were made with the exact same ingredients. They were just little yellow sugary things, and you had to vote. It was a brilliant marketing campaign, Quisp versus Quake, even though they tasted exactly the same. They were just different shapes. Oasis and Blur, same thing. If you were in England in the, I don't know, is that the 70s, the 80s? When were Oasis and Blur? 80s, probably. 80s? You had to pick. You had to battle of the bands. And you've heard of Oasis. Blur, less well-known. I find that consistently, but still very popular. Again, we'll have to find out what the 7th war was. Caroline, today, reaffirming that no boots on the ground, number 3.
The president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The president understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
All right, Mark, I just want to get your temperature. Do you feel like we're headed towards a bilateral and or a trilateral, or do you feel more like Putin is not going to actually do this, despite the confidence expressed by Caroline Leavitt and the president?
I think it's slightly more likely that there's going to be another meeting. I just don't know what it looks like, because while I can understand how Putin could be royally yanking Donald Trump's chain, I do think, why would he go through all of this effort not to at least continue it a little further?
Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, I plug my own work. I wrote it on Monday morning. It appeared about sort of the 3 big things behind what Trump is doing. And I think this is what everyone needs to understand, which is thing number 1, meet with Putin, sound him out to see if he agrees to peace. Thing number 2, meet with Zelensky, sound him out, see if he agrees to have a meeting about peace. And then thing number 3, a meeting with these 2 guys to hammer out peace. Yeah. And anything he says, as one of his advisors told me, is foreplay. It's all foreplay to get to that. Yep. So yeah, no boots on the ground. If there is a final deal, and if Vladimir Putin makes it as a condition of that deal that there should be U.S. troops on the ground, or if Trump feels the need to do it, then he'll do it. So all of this stuff that is being said now, it's just a lot of noise. I just don't think there's enough signal.
Yeah. So I want to polymarket 2 questions here. They're so interesting. It's with our partners at Polymarket, a current market that's on there with their bettors who can bet on lots of different kinds of events, economics, the weather, and all sorts of things. But investors can bet on things like this. The question, will Putin meet with Zelensky by the end of August? So that's just, will he meet with him in the next 10 days or so? There you can see the trend. Today, traders are putting 15% odds on a meeting between the 2 people by the end of the month. It had risen to 25%, but it's now back down to 15%. So it's trending negative. And Mark, what do you think the bettors are keying off of? The comments from Moscow?
I think just probably common sense. Like, yeah, I would bet it's far likelier that they don't meet before August 31st, but that's just me.
Okay. Another thing we want to Polymarket. Will Russia and Ukraine reach a ceasefire in 2025? So by the end of the year, will there be a ceasefire? And this one, counter to the previous event, Poly market traders are putting 37% odds that Russia and Ukraine will reach a ceasefire. That's climbed. Last month it was 13%. So rising that there'll be a ceasefire, declining that over a short period of time that there'll be a meeting. Interesting. Gabe, I want to ask you about the media piece of this. Here's Caroline Leavitt complaining about the coverage of the president's peace efforts. This is number 5, please.
One thing that has absolutely not changed is the media's negative and downright false coverage of President Trump and his foreign policy accomplishments. From the beginning of this entire process, much of the left-wing media has been actively rooting against the President of the United States in the pursuit of peace. Initially, the media ridiculously claimed that President Trump was somehow beholden to Russia for even agreeing to have a face-to-face discussion with President Putin inside of the United States. The media said President Trump was making a grave mistake by, quote, legitimizing Putin. They were aghast that President Trump would treat another world leader like a world leader. The media relentlessly attacked President Trump and claimed he suffered a, quote, major defeat for not immediately emerging with a final agreement, even though he said heading into that meeting, this was a meeting to listen and to understand how to move the ball forward. All weekend following those historic U.S.-Russia bilateral talks, we listened to clueless pundits on television trying but failing to claim that the president had failed. The so-called experts in the foreign policy establishment, whose record is nothing but endless wars, trillions of wasted taxpayer dollars, and dead Americans, have the nerve to try and lecture President Trump, who has solved 7 global conflicts in 7 months, about peace. This is the same president, by the way, who brokered the Abraham Accords in his first term, on top of more than half a dozen other peace deals this year alone, as I just said. We also saw yesterday the president of Ukraine and all of the other major leaders of Europe fly.
Gabe, how would you rate the coverage of this whole process so far? Do you think it's been appropriately balanced, or as Caroline argues, and I would agree, it's been pretty negative about the president's efforts, expecting him, as she said, to get a peace deal in a day?
Yeah, I mean, it seems generally I'd agree with you. I think that it's sort of been pretty antagonistic, and that tracks a lot of the reporting for a long time about like Trump and Putin, and I think their purported relationship that's extended beyond, I think, what reality has illustrated as far as 2016 and whatnot. But I think, Mark, I was kind of curious as far Mark Caputo, as far as that, if you think that illustrates like from an instinct basis, like, do you think Caroline is, I don't know, do you think that that's just another example of the White House going after media the way they do on every issue? Or did you think that how Caroline responded to that question, like it was particularly long, her response there? And I guess I wondered if you think that that is indicative of like, they care particularly how people perceive what the White House thinks about this.
Great question. So Mark, is there special juice on this one?
It's a little bit of both, because the White House, I can tell you, was pissed off at the coverage on Friday. I don't want to say the name of the reporter, but there's a certain TV reporter who came out and set the tone. I don't know if that reporter, and I'm not going to mention gender, had called it a failure. But when you watch that and you watch the tenor of a lot of the television reporting about it, you would have thought like, wow, the bottom dropped out. Now, that said, Donald Trump, and to a degree, everybody else in the press shop bears some blame for that, because Trump was the one who put out the ceasefire idea. And he said, if I don't get a ceasefire, I'm not going to be happy. He comes out, he doesn't have a ceasefire. And then Trump, whom everyone is used to being garrulous, voluble, talkative, doesn't have a Q&A. So it looked to a lot of the people in that room, and then more broadly on social media, where lots of ideas can quickly become conventional wisdom, that it was a failure.
Yeah, I perfectly said. And there are lots of reasons that contributed to it, including just superficiality and hostility to Trump. I'll tell you
100%.
another mistake they made, and this is obvious, and you both, I'm sure, have thought it, and lots of you have. You ask reporters to fly to Anchorage, then you don't have a press conference, even though you say you're going to have one, and then you do an interview with Hannity, right? You give an exclusive to Hannity, which I thought was a mistake. And I think just in general, like, You shouldn't be doing national security stuff as an
Hannity didn't even ask about a ceasefire.
Yeah,
The word
yeah,
ceasefire never
yeah,
came out of Hannity's
yeah.
mouth. So you can understand it was like a massage.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It
yeah.
was like a gimmick, right?
It was not good press management, but as always, they get some hits. So again, if you want to ask about Ukraine, please raise your hand. Let's talk about Gabe's story. Gabe wrote recently another story about Laura Loomer, and today he advances the story beyond the New York Times and others have, and Axios has written a ton about Loomer and her relationship with her colleagues. But Gabe, talk about the path-breaking piece you've done and why it's caused such a reaction already.
Yeah, so we had run a story in the Free Press that went up earlier today, quoting 5 Trump administration officials and then different other sources close to the White House, who were describing either skepticism or suspicion about sort of like Laura Loomer's motives as far as going after officials in the administration, and pointing to us, at least in their telling, certain examples that they believe, are indicative of, or at least allow them to question her motives, which again, Laura Loomer, so, right-wing journalist, opposition researcher, activist, those are the 3, I think, phrases that she would use to describe herself.
Friend of the president.
Friend of the president, boxer with Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Former guest on this program.
She chained herself to Twitter in 2018 in New York City.
Yeah.
She said that she goes after Donald Trump, based on loyalty to the president. And I think there's a few different examples that officials just increasingly, were telling me that they thought they were drawing questions about that. And I think just one I would point to is recently, and I think this was the main example that people pointed to us to, but recently Loomer had gone after Vinay Prasad, a top Food and Drug Administration official, and criticized him for being a purported progressive leftist saboteur. Those were her words. And then she took kind of an out of context video from a podcast in which she made some comments about the pandemic and said that he like stabbed a Trump voodoo doll or something akin to that. But anyway, Loomer was criticizing him based on some partisan lines, and that coincided with the Wall Street Journal running a few stories criticizing Prasad for, at the FDA, halting shipments of a gene therapy drug, as well as some of his other policies. And then not before long, I mean, we don't know an overt connection between those two things, but not before long, Prasad was gone at the FDA.
Although he's been brought back.
Yeah, so he was reinstated after HHS Secretary RFK and Marty McCary had lobbied Susie Wiles to bring him back, essentially. But one thing that people had kind of pointed us to that they were looking into in the White House or otherwise was the fact that there's a lobbying firm that in June, Michael Best Strategies, that had registered to lobby on behalf of Sarepta, the pharmaceutical company that the drug maker of the drugs that Prasad had halted shipment of, and that there's some Republican connections of that firm.
Right. So I'm going to make a few points, ask a couple questions before we get to the joy of reading Laura's tweets in response to Gabe's piece. And I want Mark to be able to ask some questions of Gabe as well. A few things. First of all, the quotes are quite something, and they're all anonymous. So Gabe, first of all, why should people trust, who are skeptical of the media, that these are people, not just real quotes, but people of standing who if we knew who they were, we'd say, well, it's significant that they're saying this about Laura Loomer, because you don't characterize them except to say they're White House officials or administration officials.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it was my choice, I would absolutely love to put all these people's names in a story. Obviously, I would always veer toward, the opportunity to quote people on the record. But when you're talking to, officials in the government or otherwise, of course, they're not, in the comm shop or otherwise, oftentimes. And so you're not really, that's not a feasible thing. But yeah, all these people, the officials we identified, right, work in the Trump administration, work in the White House.
Yeah. So Laura Loomer makes no bones about the fact that she's a business person. So some of her activities, she says she does to help the president make sure there's no one disloyal in the government. But she has corporate clients. And just to be clear, and Gabe makes this clear in the story, no one has any proof. No one's got a contract or any evidence, but it's news that this is the accusations of people who work around the president. And they suggest, as your story suggests, they're sick of this. They're sick of this dynamic where someone they believe is doing this sometimes for money still has this extraordinary influence. Lastly, I want to ask you this, and then turn it over to Mark. Laura Loomer responded briefly in your piece, but at length on Twitter. Were you able to interview her, or she just sent you a statement?
We were messaging back and forth throughout basically the day,
Yeah.
a day before we published it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever spoken to her?
I was trying to interview her for my last story.
Yeah.
And then she pulled out like the last 20 minutes or something. But
yeah. Okay. Mark, questions for Gabe if you have them.
Oh, none. All I can say is his story is 100% accurate. If we were colleagues, I would tell him, if we were in a private setting, exactly who told him all of those things.
Because you know
I'm
the
just
people
telling
who, yeah, you know the people.
Yeah.
I
can tell who some of them are down
Yeah.
to the language.
Yeah.
I think.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you, like that.
Yeah.
That story is accurate.
Yeah. So just as an outsider, not as well versed as you two are, I know there are people in the White House who would look at that piece and say, our goal is to get Laura Loomer out. And we couldn't get her out by criticizing her or saying she's got too much influence or, she's too close to the president. So we're going to try to get her out by, or they hope, whether they're the people quoted or not. And there's no doubt, and Mark will, I'm sure, agree, they really believe this. This isn't made up. They really believe it, but they're trying to get her out. Did either of you have any reason to believe that this will cause the president to say no more influence, Laura?
I don't think they're trying to get her out per se. They would prefer that. People have been trying to do this with Laura and the relationship with the president since the campaign. What I think they're reasonably trying to do is just tell her, like, look, knock it the fuck off. Just stop causing so many problems. And I think this is a sort of a shot across it's just a way to just say quit or, stop causing so many problems. Now, Laura's a hellraiser, so I don't think she's going to stop causing problems.
Yeah. Mark, Gabe, did you have a sense of the motivation of your sources?
I generally would agree with Mark. I think it's like the aim of those officials and other people is to sort of, just like shot across the bow to tell Laura that, it's not just people on Twitter publicly speculating about who funds her or who may not fund her, but actually it is people in the government and they are quite frustrated.
Yeah.
I will say, we quoted another official and in a prior story, another one, and a former official who recently departed an agency who weren't necessarily as antagonistic of Laura. They view her as advantageous to send her information and, dig on their rivals in the administration.
Yeah.
And I think the other important thing about this, you asked, is this going to mean that Trump distances from Laura? I don't think so, but I also think that the issue of Laura's influence in the government pervades far beyond like President Trump. I think there's officials at places like the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and otherwise, like right-wing officials, political appointees who very much would be happy to be DMing with her and send her dirt. And that's something that Trump can't and is not going to be able to control.
Yeah. All right. Sam, put up number 10. This is a headline of Gabe's piece. Gabe, can you read? I don't read the chat, but I glance. Can you read one or two of the quotes from your piece? Do you have that available to read?
I do not have it handy.
Okay. That's all right.
And the headline, by the way, is
that's
very accurate there. White House officials have had it. That's just right. Not like they're trying to get rid of her. They're like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Gabe, can you pull up your piece? Is that possible?
Yeah.
I just want just someone in the chat asked, and it's a good question. We've characterized the quotes, but I'd love you to read one or two, and then we're going to read Laura's tweets, and then we're going to take your questions.
For sure. So here's one White House official who spoke to me. He said, Laura is more trouble than she's worth. She used to pretty much just amplify the MAGA line, but now it's pretty clear that she has her own agenda. Another White House official said, there's widespread understanding here that she's not guided entirely by loyalties to the president, but external business interests.
Yeah, and again, that's the main accusation in the piece is that she's working as a cutout with lobbyists to help advance an agenda. The last thing Barry Weiss and Gabe need from me is promotion because they're doing just fine. But if you've never read the Free Press, I recommend Gabe's piece, but I also recommend you become a subscriber. It's really an inspiration to those of us at Two Way and for anybody who cares about quality journalism to start from scratch a new news organization of quality, and to hire people like Gabe is quite an accomplishment. So I recommend it to you. Let's read some of Laura's tweets, and they're very long. Laura's a prolific tweeter. We'll just look at some of them. Number 11, please. This is, I believe, her first response to Gabe. I'm going to blow this up giant so I can read it here. The story about me in the Free Press today, accusing me of being a lobbyist, but I'm actually just an opposition researcher and an investigative journalist, has inspired me to publish a report I've been working on about a lobbyist who works at the Trump administration while also undermining the Trump administration. Since anonymous sources want to talk about my intentions, that's in quotes for those of you listening on the podcast, I want to talk about theirs. All right, so that's one. Sam, put up number 12, please. It's the next one. Laura Loomer, just remember, everyone has something to hide. Hiding behind lefty reporters, sick, I put a sick after lefty, as their quote source won't protect you from what is coming. That is, if you're putting together tonight a Laura Loomer time capsule, I'd recommend inclusion of that. And this one may be my favorite. It uses profanity, so if you're watching with the kids, please mute the TV. Number 13, this is a good one. All right, scoop. Some people who work for President Trump are jealous that they can't figure out the things I report on, so they cry about me to anti-Trump reporters, further proving that Trump is surrounded by many disloyal people. People want to pretend like I'm doing something nefarious because I created an opposition research firm. Well, am I supposed to be homeless? I'm supposed to work for Trump, but we all know that that's not happening, despite his orders to staff to onboard me 4 times. Next page. Laura claims this regularly, that the president wants to hire her, but she's blocked by other people in the White House.
There's some truth to that, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. And also she writes here about her not getting a press pass. They keep telling her they're going to give her one, and then they slow walk it. She says, "Give me a break. There are no good people in D.C. You block me from my job. You block me from a press pass as a power move while you entertain retard bloggers who don't accomplish anything and have no value. So I'm going to do my own thing, which I have every right to do. I don't care who I upset because the truth is on my side, and I work hard every day to support President Trump." Final screen. And I think this is where the profanity is. And man, that's small. Anyway, stick to anonymous sources, blah, blah, blah. Good riddance. I'll skip the profanity. All right. So let's talk about this. I gave you first. You write a piece like this, it's in the Free Press. Laura responds. There's lots on my Twitter feed about it. So you've made a splash of sorts. What happens now? Do you hear from typically or already? Have you heard from more sources based on the piece? Because that sometimes happens with a good investigative piece. What's happened since you published? Anything we should know about?
Nothing, I guess not much to share, but I would say, yeah, after publishing the story and Laura blowing it up, there's certainly more people who have ideas and want to try to get those out there. Not that they're all necessarily, verifiable, but there's some things I'm looking into.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would just say about Laura is, the main thing I got across in those posts was like her talking about, she has this perception, I think, that people in the government who might be criticizing her are sort of like jealous of her influence. And in some ways that could be correct. I don't exactly know what, I think that I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. I think that it probably is frustrating to the egos of the types of people who want to work in the federal government to have like, this chick on Twitter who's just like doing their job.
Yeah. Mark, I've covered plenty of White Houses and social media creates new things, but I've never seen anything quite like Laura.
Oh,
Loomer
yeah.
in American
She's unique,
history.
man.
Yeah.
No, she's unique. She's a badass too at what she does. She's also reckless. Like she will just run with something before she checks it out. But the reality is she has real influence with the president. She has real influence with the base. She has a real voice, and there are people who really resent her for it. And there is an element of Gabe's story, or some, not all, of the people in the story, which I think is accurate. I think the criticisms are accurate, of, oh my God, there's this gambler at this casino. Like,
Right.
How could this gambler be? Like there are a number of people who are cashing in on this administration. I don't think Gabe or those people were accusing her of, quote, lobbying. She's doing sort of what she says. Like people come to her with things and
Yeah.
she writes about them, and
Yeah.
presumably she's getting paid. And I think there's pretty good evidence of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are getting paid for advocacy work.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
go ahead, Gabe. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's exactly right. She opened a consulting firm called Loomer Strategies. She told the New York Times in June that she had 5 clients and that she had a revenue of 300,000. I asked her for updated numbers on that. She declined to comment on that. But yeah, again, like it's not it. I don't. There's a lot of consultants and lobbyists who advocate in Washington. I think in this case, she in her posts, she just had that one post calling out. She said like I'm going to be exposing another person, and then a little bit after she put out a long post about Jeff Miller, who's a big Republican lobbyist, but and saying how he's lobbying for I believe like Cornell and other universities, which has been publicly documented and known. But in that case, that's disclosed, that's registered. We don't know again if Laura's 100% advocating in some lobbying capacity, but it wasn't exactly a great example for her to point to because Jeff Miller's a known lobbyist.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's probably got there's certainly at least one other person. I imagine the shoe's going to drop on. The shoe is going to drop on.
Just so you know, I've said this, and I'm the master of hyperbole, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think Jeff Miller's the most powerful lobbyist in the history of the United States. I really do. Big fat target and very smart guy. Now, would either of you think it would be a conflict of interest for me to have done this whole segment if I am one of Laura's 5 clients? Would that be a problem? Just kidding. Just kidding. Laura, meet me, camera 1. Please come back on the show.
She has definitely got more than 5 clients.
Yeah, I agree. I loved having you on. We loved the two-way community. It was really found you compelling. And I still believe that rather than just the one-way communication on Twitter, you should come back and we should talk about Gabe, maybe be on with Gabe. Gabe would love that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Laura, please come back on the show. She's a big fan of two-way, I've been told. So I hope you're watching, Laura, and we hope to have you here. Time for your questions. If you'd like to be on the conversation, you can ask about Ukraine, Laura Loomer, why it is that the two-way podcasts are skyrocketing up the charts, whatever's on your mind. Steve, we'll start with you. Thank you for being part of two-way. Please unmute. Tell us what's on your mind for Gabe and Mark.
Mute.
There you go.
Yep.
There. It's about to happen. No. Try one more time, sir.
Nope.
Steve, you're killing me.
Steve, I think you're muted. There you go. Oh,
now, one more time, Steve. One more time, just like what you did. It's a live show.
Okay, here we go. Live TV.
Yes, Steve.
Still red. No, still
Steve,
red.
I'm gonna click on mute. Steve, don't do anything. Wait till you see it.
There you go. Just
Steve,
speak.
Talk.
Okay. Good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the grandpa like the other guests that you have on. They can't find the mute button. It just I don't know.
You're a young guy.
I know. So
chicken.
You know,
Mark,
Gabe's in his 20s, by the way.
I heard. Yeah.
So mine.
Yeah.
I dyed my hair gray. Yeah.
I'm 39.
Yeah.
Mark Halperin, I'm surprised I haven't heard about the poly market for when the morning meeting's going to be in number 1 position by the end of the year.
We're never. They shouldn't do that as a poly market because we will never pass that New York Times show. It is the Michael Jordan of podcasts. It just can't be passed. But we'll get to number 2.
Okay.
But thank you for that, Steve.
Mark Halperin, I've enjoyed your comments about the bias in the media, and of course, in the show in general. I became addicted, just before the election, watching the show. After the election, I thought, okay, good, finally, I don't have to watch anymore. But here I am.
My mom said the same thing, Steve.
Yeah. Marc Caputo, I've enjoyed your writings as well, and Mark Halperin's done a lot of episodes recently about bias in the media. Do you feel that Axios is biased or not?
I mean, I don't. When you look at our entire product, now we wrote a story today about how the White House has crime stats showing that half of the arrests and the takeover in D.C. Were in high crime neighborhoods. And we were subsequently attacked for being a pro-Trump mouthpiece. And then I subsequently pointed out Trump was inaccurately casting what happened in Crimea in 2014, whereupon I was accused of being a member of the resistance.
Yeah. Steve, no news organization that employs Marc Caputo could be biased because they just wouldn't.
There are people there at various places, not at the current place, but we won't name names.
Well, specifically, I was kind of disappointed in the article recently about RFK Jr. and I can even in the headline calling him anti-vax. I mean,
I think he is anti-vax.
I think
he
he's
is, yeah.
yeah.
Vax
Yeah.
skeptic. Is that what you
No,
feel
dude,
better?
he said he won't vaccinate his kids. He won't
Yeah.
answer
He
that
owns
question. I
it.
think at a
Yeah,
certain,
I think he owns it.
at a
Yeah.
certain point, no, he says he
Yeah.
says he's not anti-vax, but then
Yeah.
he shows that he
Yeah,
is. So
Steve, what would?
sorry,
what
I don't
would-
mean to-
what- That's okay, Steve. What would be a countervailing argument as compared to what Gabe and Mark just said to say that's an unfair headline?
Well, I think that he is anti-unsafe anti-vaccines that haven't really been tested thoroughly. And so the article started out, also referring to a lot of unverified this and that and what experts say and I think the experts are biased.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like
Steve,
you always get the Kennedy side of the story.
Yeah, I agree with your basic characterization. The press is too hostile to Kennedy, but on vaccines, I think he's opened the door to that headline. It's hard to write headlines, right? They're little bitty things.
Measles.
Because some of the vaccines that he's skeptical of are pretty thoroughly tested, and the preponderance of scientific community, not liberal science, but all science, is that they've helped society. So I'm as you know, I'm pretty dogged about being against bias, but I think calling that guy anti-vax in a headline probably okay.
And as I said, I mean, just to
Mark and then Gabe, go ahead.
He wouldn't. I think at one point he either said he wouldn't vaccinate his kids if given a chance again, and not just like the COVID vaccine, right? Or he said, or he refused to answer the question. The handling of the measles vaccine issue out in West Texas was interesting because he was supposed to write an op-ed. The White House wanted him to write an op-ed. It took an extra 2 days to force it out of him. He put in the 7th paragraph of a 12-paragraph story, like people should make up their own minds about whether a measles vaccine works. It was so low that when it was given to Fox actually had to take it as a pull quote and essentially make it the 2nd paragraph. All of the totality of his posture with vaccines is pretty anti-vaccine. So I think it's fair to call him anti-vax there. I don't think it was fair to call DeSantis, my Florida governor, governor in Florida where I live, anti-vax, and I was very careful about that when I worked at Politico. I do think those are distinguishable, though.
Gabe, before you jump in, let me just say one thing, Steve. Echoing everything Mark said, I would call someone who had those positions anti-vax. But if he's the head of HHS, I think there's even more reason to say he's anti-vax, because he's in charge of trying to give the parents in this country a sense of whether they should have their kids vaccinated. And he certainly said and done many things which would discourage some parents from doing it. So, Gabe.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that the term anti-vax fairly applies to RFK. However, I do understand, like, Steve, I feel like I do sympathize with news outlets. They're always trying to overly simplify headlines where it's pro, anti, and it's like banging you over the head. Whereas like, yeah, the piece could just like describe the nuances, ideally, of RFK's opinions, and we don't need to like brand him in a headline. Could just say Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whatever, and then describe it. So I mean, I do think that point's like it's like a frustrating thing of headlines, which is like it has to simplify things.
Yeah. Here's a breaking news story related to bias about 60 Minutes. And I've said this before, given their influence in our media society, their liberal anti-Trump bias has been as insidious as any other.
Oh, it's more than just anti-Trump. It's 60 Minutes political interviews have been pro-Democrat since at least the Obama era.
Yeah, we all know that. Anyone with eyes and ears know that. And yet 60 Minutes and CBS postures like they're the gold standard. Here's an interview the New York Times did. This is a new, I don't know the number, Sam, but you'll find it. Sherry Redstone did an interview with CBS, with the New York Times rather. And here's what comes out of that piece. The Redstones also worried that Mr. Trump's lawyers could cherry pick raw footage and internal communications and do more damage to CBS News's reputation than any settlement would. This is in the context of CBS settling with Donald Trump, giving him a bunch of money, and it was widely attributed to them wanting to get the merger through so the Redstones could pocket some cash. And the video that was most discussed was an editing of the Kamala Harris interview, which I've said, counter to everything else I've said about this matter, was ridiculous. It's just they edited an interview. There was nothing biased about it. But here's what it says. Ms. Redstone said CBS personnel had told her that on October 23, when Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes interviewed President Biden, the president had seemed drowsy, hilarious, drowsy, and had to be prodded to answer. she and Tyler, I don't know who Tyler is, someone will tell me, worried that CBS might be accused of editing the interview to consider
Tyler's her son.
her son, okay, to conceal Mr. Biden's failings. The case was never as black and white as people assume. So now, of course, Halperin's fifth rule of the media is, or of Washington rather, is anything that's famous for not being released will eventually have to be released. We all now want to see the outtakes from this Biden interview because I bet you that one, contrary to the Harris interview, which was just edited the way magazine pieces are edited, which is to provide clarity. If she gives a rambling answer, they're going to edit it so it's less rambling because it's boring TV to listen to a rambling answer. Mm-hmm. Whereas it sounds like if what Sherry Redstone is saying is true, this Biden interview was edited as part of the cover-up to make sure people had a limited window into his cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to seeing the Biden outtakes. Steve, real quick.
Yeah, one quick follow-up, Mark. We have this criticism and concern about bias in the traditional media.
Yeah,
I think who cares about traditional media? I almost dislike the fact that you're always referring to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the this or that. It's like, who cares anymore? Who watches that? Two-way is the new media, in my opinion. And just to bring Gabe in a sense, who cares what Laura Loomer says? It almost doesn't matter. I mean, I appreciate you're right about it and try to unearth the truth, but I mean, the two-way is the future.
So
I think.
Steve, I appreciate the kind words, and I'll just say the two reasons I care. One is they still have enormous influence, not just in terms of their readership, but people in the government, people in the White House read it, and they have an influence over the Democratic Party that's insidious because it gives Democrats a false sense of what's going on. But the other reason is, I've said this before, we need news organizations in this country with the heft to file Freedom of Information Act requests, to go to court, to send out war correspondence. And the New York Times is one of the few places capable of that. With all due respect to the Free Press and Axios, if there's a war in Afghanistan, they're not sending 10 people. They're just not. So my view is no one's going to start new ones. And so the few we have to try to salvage them, and they have to have credibility to not be liberally biased, but to be all the things they are. The New York Times is a daily miracle. The stuff they publish, forget politics, art, culture, a lot of it's woke and whatever, but some of it is world-class journalism that doesn't exist anyplace else. So
100%.
I want them to fix themselves because we're not getting anybody else. And so the five or so that are remaining, we need.
Steve, I look forward to your success in investment fundraising to take the place.
Thank you. Really appreciate you supported Two-Way and your kind words, and grateful to you for being part of it. All right, let's try to get Carly in real quick. Carly, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are as quick as you can. What's on your mind for Gabe and Mark?
Hi. I'm in New Jersey, so I have a three-pronged question. So for any of you to what you think. One, why do you think that Biden did not try hard to end the war? Number two, is the military-industrial complex invested in this war so they can keep selling arms? And the third would be, would Putin ever be afraid that NATO, Europe, the United States could decimate his army? Whatever you can share, because what is going on is just, there's a lot to think about.
Carly, I love the first two questions. They're great. Do you say designate his army? Is that what you said?
Decimate his army.
Decimate, destroy.
Got it. Mark, those are three great questions.
Yeah, I'll certainly take one. I can take all of them.
Take them all.
So one, understand this is the importance of culture. In the transatlantic culture, the establishment, the foreign policy and intelligence services and circles, the governments of Europe, there has always been, in the modern era, an anti-Russian bias. And in the United States, with Democrats, it became heightened with the 2016 election. So Russia is just one of those things, because of its association with Trump from 2016. I'm not saying it's fair, I'm not saying it's unfair, is just one of those things that just grip their minds. But overall, in the transatlantic alliance, in the NATO alliance, in NATO countries, NATO was formed as a means of opposing Russian aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, it triggered this sort of latent sense of, we're not going to let them get away with that. We're going to fight Russia to basically the last drop of Ukrainian blood. We're going to finance the war against Russia. We're going to bleed them dry, and they're going to withdraw in the same way that the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan. That was the overall view. That's why there wasn't really an effort to try peace, because the idea is you don't reward aggression like that, because like Hitler, Putin is not going to stop there. That is their mindset. The different mindset with Donald Trump, which prevailed arguably in the election, is that Putin's not going to stop. He's got enough men to keep throwing into the meat grinder, as Marco Rubio said recently and has said repeatedly. Therefore, we just need to cut our losses, practice a very savage pragmatism, and give him some of the lands he unlawfully seized and try to move on with some sort of peace deal. So that answers one. Like, the reason is that Biden and the Transatlantic Alliance, the NATO alliance, they just cannot conceive of giving Putin land, which in their view is a W, and it sets terrible precedent. And I understand that argument. As for number two, yeah, military industrial complex loves it. Donald Trump loves it. He has talked repeatedly now about how, look, NATO's going to buy our weapons to send to Ukraine, and we're not going to stop that. And then as for number three, Putin invaded Ukraine essentially because of his paranoia that NATO was going to expand to his door. And so he's always been worried about that. Is he justified in that? Well, it is an anti-Russian alliance. And how would we react if China was suddenly gaining an anti-US foothold in Mexico? We wouldn't react well to that. And that sort of explains, to a degree, what Putin's mindset is.
Carly, very grateful to you. Three great questions, and grateful to Mark for the answers. Thank you. All right, a few things before we go. First of all, Gabe, how was your first two-way experience?
It's awesome. Great.
Didn't mean to talk too much. Sorry about that.
No, happy to have you both on. And Gabe, I hope you'll come back. And again, if you haven't read Gabe's piece, I recommend it. It's really well written, and it's totally fair. Laura may not like it, but she can pick her own fights and win her own fights. So thank you for bringing that to us. Again, this program's available as a podcast now. I love the morning meeting, but a little embarrassing to have the morning meeting be number 7 on the news podcast list, and this show be slightly lower. So let's subscribe to both, please. Both the morning meeting and Two Way Tonight. Available now on podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to us. Tonight, available also on the Megyn Kelly Network, is my show Next Up. I interviewed Mark Short, who worked with Mike Pence, about what it means now to be a conservative Republican. I also interviewed Patty Solis Doyle. Patty's one of the smartest people I know about Democratic politics. Ran Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008, and just so clear-eyed about what it takes to run for president. And a lot of our conversation is she endorsed my view that all these people thinking about running in this election for the Democrats, almost none of them have run before. Buttigieg and a few others have if they run, but most of them have never run. And Patty and I ran through what are some of the toughest things about running for president that these folks, they say, oh, I've run for Senate, I've run for governor, I know how hard it is to raise money, I know what the scrutiny is like. We run through, in her view, and I agree with her view, they don't really know. It is nothing like running for president. We also talked about who's in the top tier of the presidential field right now for the Democrats and who's in tier 2. Here's a little bit of my conversation with Patty. This is 23, I believe. He's now in the tier 1 by himself. What do you think? This is about Gavin Newsom.
I agree with that. I 3 months ago, if you had asked me about Gavin Newsom, I said, no, he doesn't have what it takes. Yes, he's good looking. People like good looking politicians, but he doesn't really have what it takes to run against Trump. Because basically between now and this, the next election, 2028, you're running against Trump, whether you like it or not. You're going to run against Trump, even though Trump is not going to be on the ballot in 2028, or so we think. He's going to run against his policies. He's going to run against his style. He's going to run against, he or she will run against. And Gavin Newsom has proven to really be able to do that thus far. And it's been in a very short period of time. I think Democrats right now, and I think the last time I was on this show, I said that we were leaderless and messageless, and
a few people noticed.
A few people noticed. But Gavin Newsom is sort of picking up that, I'm going to be the leader. I'm going to take on the message. And I'm going to have some ideas. And as you said, I think he's tier 1 right now.
I posited to Patty that tier 2, because we agreed Newsom's alone in tier 1 now after a very brief period of time. I posited a 3-person tier 2, and Patty added a 4th person. I can't give it all away. Listen to Next Up to find out who Patty and I put in tier 2. I put 3 people. She put those 3 people plus 1. take a listen. Spotify, Apple, on YouTube. I think you'll enjoy it. And my reported monologue is on Trump and Russia and how his policies differ from Biden's, and what I think the 5 big pending questions are, to see where that goes. Grateful to you all for being part of the two-way community. Grateful to Gabe and Mark. Mark is fan favorite, and Gabe first time here, but quickly becoming a fan favorite if the chat's any indication. And I'll be back with Sean and Dan on the very highly rated morning meeting podcast and the YouTube program tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Grateful to you all. Have a good evening. Starting now, 7 o'clock, Michael Moynihan on Michael Moynihan, the Moynihan Report. Michael's interview with Peter Moskos about the New York City crime issue, a great book that is really informative about what's going on now. So please turn over and watch Michael. Thank you for being part of Two Way. I will see you at 9 a.m. Eastern for the morning meeting.